Please welcome our special guest tonight, Vanessa Dew.
Hi, so nice to meet you. Yeah.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Wow, such a fun crowd here.
These are undergrads. Did you speak recently in a grad class?
Yes, I spoke in feasibility. And
Teaches that?
Professor Mednick.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, welcome back to the mighty undergrads. These guys, I've taught grads, I've taught undergrads. There's nothing like undergrads.
Just hold it down. Nice.
Yeah. Welcome back. Can you give us sort of an overview of where the company is today? We're gonna go back, talk about your life, your upbringing, some of your core values. The class is primarily on mindset, entrepreneurial mindset, so it's not as much the nuts and bolts. We'll cover that, but just give us an overview of the company, not how you started, but sort of where it stands today.
Yeah. So the category itself is about $1 billion today. Health-Ade is not only the fastest kombucha brand in the category, but also the highest growth contributor in terms of dollars of the category. We just surpassed $100 million in retail sales about 2 weeks ago. So it's a huge accomplishment for us. We have about 300 employees. We sell in all 50 states. About 30,000 outlets now and counting. And we just entered Canada and Mexico and making our foray across the pond, hopefully in 2020. So lots of great tailwinds with Health-Ade, from a metric standpoint, but the heart of it, our people are making it happen out there.
Well, for the uninitiated, for those who don't drink kombucha regularly, can you tell us what it is and what are the medicinal benefits?
Yeah. So kombucha, show of hands, who's tried kombucha before, period?
Oh man, this is a...
All right, who's tried Health-Ade before? It's the real test. All right, so we got some Health-Ade fans out there, good to see. So kombucha, it's rich in probiotics, a fermented tea, rich in probiotics and healthy acids. So the way we started brewing in 2.5-gallon glass jars, super small batches, we flavor with cold pressed juice. So everything is the real old-fashioned way to brew kombucha. That's actually how we started making it in our closets. So it's good for your gut at the core. And ultimately, it also makes you feel good. It's refreshing, it's bubbly, and it really is your aid to health. It makes you feel good and kind of powers you through your day without that crazy jolt that you get from coffee, and makes you feel light and feel good.
And so it's got benefits for your gut, thank God. You're going to hear a lot of different entrepreneurs come through, and I want you to all understand, especially as you graduate, that the pressure to find the right job and the right experience, there is no one path. And so I want to talk to Vanessa about that in a second. But first, for context, let's go back and so where were you? Where did you grow up as a child? How many kids in your family? And what did your parents do, or what did they do for occupation?
Yeah, so I'm actually one of the few non-transplants. I'm an Angelino myself. I'm Asian American, Chinese American specifically. I have one sister. She's younger. She's an Amazon, tried and true, 8 years there. So she's definitely ran the gauntlet. I grew up just the suburbs here in LA in Encino. For all intents and purposes, I grew up pretty sheltered, I would say, leading a pretty normal life. But I actually think it was kind of those foundations and kind of that upbringing and seeing my parents just put in the 9 to 5 that really wanted me to carve out more for myself and leave an imprint that was different than what they did. They're both, my dad is actually a double Trojan. He's an engineering undergrad with a business school, grad school degree. And my mom is also the same. She actually is a double E major. So both of them follow the traditional path, if you will, to be an engineer, to follow the safe path of sciences. They both went into Fortune 50 companies, became executives there. But for me, I just thought, man, they have a grind and they're working for the man. At least that's what I thought. But they seem to want to provide for us in the best way they could, and that's the best way they knew how.
And I've read in other places that your mother was a real inspiration for you. What were a lesson or two that you've learned from her?
My mom, she's been a real source of strength for me in so many ways. So growing up, I remember when I was 6 years old, she got really sick, and since that time, she was sick throughout my whole life actually, and so but that never defined her. She never let that get her down. She still had a thriving career. She was still the best mom that I ever knew. She was always at my sporting events, my PTO bake sale events. She was part of our yearbook committee at school. She was so involved. You would never know that she had this autoimmune disease and later on cancer. So for me, she's the definition of strength. And I really think about her in a lot of the hard times of building Health-Ade, because she carried on with so much strength, but also with so much humility, grace, laughter, and happiness that if she can go through close to 30 years of sickness and do all that she has, we can live and prosper throughout the hard times because she's faced so much more. I think the second thing I gain from her is this ability to make people feel welcome. And not a lot of people can do that, but our house was always the house where my mom had a meal and had open arms for you, whoever you were. So I think that approachability and that openness really instilled in me kind of the open-mindedness to people, our team, everyone out there trying to do something, and everyone has a story. And so just being really empathetic to that.
Let's skip forward to like first jobs out of school. What you were in pharmaceutical sales. Can you tell us, and some of you may go into sales, can you tell us about that job and the value of having sales experience as an entrepreneur, or regardless of what you do?
Yeah, so when my undergrad was in biochem, I thought I was going to be a doctor. That was what I thought I should do. When I realized I was only doing it because of the should reasons, I quickly pivoted, but I had the science background behind me. So I thought, okay, I don't want to be in a lab all day, so what's the next best thing? Pharmaceutical sales, okay, customer facing, I have a science understanding, sounds like a great fit. So went into pharmaceuticals with GSK, as one of the top companies in the world. And I have to say that was an interesting experience, more so in resiliency. I think pharmaceuticals and also really any sales job teaches you this idea that you may be rejected and people may just really turn their back on you because they just don't want to talk to you. But that type of interaction teaches you early in your career that it's not you, it's not personal, but how do you still tap into that through some other method? If they're not going to open the door for you, how do you jump through the window? What's the third door? And so that was an important lesson early on. And I also met my fellow co-founder at our first job as well, so I think it was fortuitous in many different ways. Another piece of, I guess, insight I learned in that job is how I didn't want to be as a leader, I guess you could say. Going to work for a large global company, there's a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of management just to be managers. There's a lot of just all talk and not walking the walk. And so it was my first crash course in working for someone. And I remember thinking, like, there has to be a better way, because you are a human at the end of the day. There has to be a better way to lead people. And I think it was more than anything a lesson in how not to be.
Especially if you're young and you've got time to do internships, take experiences, there are things that you're just going to say, not for me, cross them off your list. It's better that you do that. And some of the experiences that you get will be like, yeah, I never want to manage like that particular person. And those are valuable experiences, even if they don't sort of lead to something. So you weren't put on earth and didn't always dream of creating a drink or a kombucha. So where does the vision, the original idea, come from that? And how was it connected to a potential hair loss product?
Yes, you read the backstory. So kombucha, I can say that I didn't know about it in college or even really my early 20s. I had heard about it through Dinah. She had been brewing it in her nutritionist years. She was brewing it for a course. She was also brewing it at home, experimenting with fermented foods. I heard about it through her as a great replacement for my $6 venti latte that was both expensive, unhealthy, and high in sugar. So that was actually my replacement in my mid-20s to feel healthier, to feel better about myself. And then it made me feel good. And I thought I was doing something good for my gut. Actually, when I was at USC, we had formed this entrepreneur club. Kombucha was just a drink that we enjoyed too in our lives. And at this entrepreneur club, we were sipping on Dinah's kombucha. We were talking about all the different business ideas that we could fathom. And we started, much from a note from feasibility with Mednick, what are the pains out in our society? What are we trying to solve with our business? And we came up with lots of different ideas. There was a parking spot finder app. There was an iPhone thermometer. This isn't for me, but girls with skinny calves with the boots that slouch. How do we keep them up and look cute? So a lot of different ideas. One day, Justin came home, the third in our trio, and he was utterly distraught because his hairdresser said he was going to be bald by 30. And so we thought, aha, okay, there's a pain here. It's hair loss. Many billions of people encounter this. It's a huge industry, not just here in the US, but worldwide, affects men and women. So how do we do something about it? We had kombucha. Anecdotally, we heard that kombucha could be good for hair loss. Not to drink necessarily, but that SCOBY that you use to ferment kombucha that we had because Dinah had been brewing kombucha could be linked to hair growth. So we thought, okay, let's try and brew lots of these SCOBYs for hair loss projects. And so here we were buying these jars at Bed Bath & Beyond and with a 20% off coupon, trying to brew more kombucha. We were giving away the liquid, the kombucha, to our friends and to our family because we didn't need that. It was a byproduct to the actual thing we needed, which was the SCOBY. And so, we put the mask on Justin's head. We tried to wash his hair out, count the hairs in our cheesecloth. But to no avail. Our core competency, that buzzword that you hear in business school or college, it was not being a clinician and to run a double-blind, placebo-controlled hair loss study. But what we did have was really amazing kombucha. Our friends, our family, they kept on coming back for more of the good stuff. And so when we realized we're not going to create this hair loss product, we thought, what could we do? We had this amazing kombucha. Why don't we bottle it? I had a connection in the farmer's market growing up in LA, so we started selling at the Brentwood Farmer's Market, and that was March of 2012 when we sold our first bottle.
I would often tell students or anyone, don't go into a conference room with a whiteboard and say best idea by Saturday wins. That's usually not the way to start a company. It didn't sound like you had a deadline like that, but things find you, and they were trying to solve a problem, but it's just hilarious that in between trying to solve the problem, you're actually drinking the kombucha. This stuff's pretty good. We should sell it. It's a pretty rare story, the way it sort of evolved. So you started the farmer's market, sort of little check, big dreams. How much did you use to start of your own money just to start the company?
Yeah, each of us put in probably collectively $800 each. That was to get us our initial materials. And all we needed was the jar, the ingredients we bought from Whole Foods, most expensive ingredients we bought, by the way, and just the table and the tents. And we were able to start our business in the farmer's market. And it really was self-sustaining from there because every weekend we would sell out. So when we sold out, we just made more based on the break-even that we achieved each weekend.
So you're sort of hustling weekend to weekend. The sales experience probably helped out to convince people to carry it. At what point is there an inflection where you go from farmer's market to we need to start finding either retail distribution or other?
Well, if you've ever been to a farmer's market, you might not recognize or kind of know how you get to the farmer's market as a vendor. So what's all involved in that is waking up at 3 a.m. And for us, we had to kind of crawl through the garage so we didn't wake up the neighbors, pack our coolers. We had to, go to the farmer's market, set up the tent, and then, you're working at the farmer's market. So we had to actively go talk to customers about what is kombucha. At that time, not many people knew what it was. So they kept on saying, kombu, what is this? So we had to hustle it. We had to sample it. We had to talk about it. We had to sell it. That ultimately does take a physical toll on you. And, you're working Saturday, Sunday, weekends. We also were brewing in our closets at the same time. So after the markets, we would go then brew a batch of kombucha. We also still had our 9-to-5 jobs. I was in school. So ultimately something had to give. And at the end of 2012, we were in about 7 markets around LA. So that was crazy. And we were still working 9 to 5. And we also thought there has to be a better way to make some money to grow. Because keep in mind, we were breaking even at these farmers markets. So that's when we started to start a wholesale business. We had no idea what distribution was. We had no idea that these people drove trucks around that actually dropped off product. We thought we had to deliver it ourselves. So in 2013, we embarked on a wholesale project where we took our friends, our family, anyone on Craigslist who answered our job posting, and we hired them as 1099s to start to go out into the world and cold call these accounts, everywhere from Santa Monica, down the 10 to downtown, up to Pasadena and South Bay. Would you want to sell Health-Ade kombucha in your store or in your cafe? By the end of 2013, we actually accumulated about 300 accounts. We were our own delivery drivers. And for us, we started to really grow a name for ourselves in LA. And that's when we got the first initial interest from the first main grocery store, Gelson's. And that's when we flipped on distribution. And that was really a game changer for us in terms of volume and ultimately scale and distribution.
What is, in a product-oriented world, what is the competitive advantage that you have? Is it the formulation, the taste? Is it distribution? Is it your brand? Is it all of those? But sort of, how do you not just protect, but how do you stand out from the rest of the market?
Yeah. So I think it's 3 things. I would say at the core, we have an amazing tasting product. So we've always made it with the idea that it's the best tasting, highest quality kombucha out there. So when you first taste it, and you may have been scared about what kombucha is, you're into it. And that has never failed us. So a great product will never fail out there. And that's what we hold true to us every day. Second is, I would say our brand. If you see our brand on the shelf next to any other bottle out there, we stand out. We stand out for a reason, both with our colors, our personality. When you start to get to know the brand, our entrepreneurial story comes out. So there's something there that grabs you, and it's not just any old product that you're drinking. And then third is the team. You spoke on distribution, you spoke on execution. The team has really, they've carried the brand forward. We were able to start it, and we lead it, and we operate it, but our team of 300 hold it down every day. They work so hard. They manifest the brand in ways that we couldn't imagine. And they go the extra mile that actually carries it forward, and they execute like no other. So, maybe I'm biased, but I think they're second to none out in the CPG world.
At what point do you decide whether to fund it organically or whether you're going to take some outside capital to help fuel faster growth? And then there's a recent investment that's pretty interesting and synergistic. So at what point did you decide maybe we should take some money?
Yeah, so when we were growing in 2013, when we realized the farmers markets, we needed to expand beyond that, we started growing quite quickly here in LA. What we didn't have was money, though. We had a credit card and a dream to be a lifestyle brand and really grow it till kingdom come. And we didn't understand necessarily the hurdles around growth. We didn't understand the cash cycles that come when you have accounts receivable. And it was July of 2013 when we really hit a wall because Our accounts have been the highest they ever have been. We were record amounts of orders week over week, but we couldn't pay our credit card bill. And it was that growth curve that we were just embarking on when we realized we needed to get funded. And I think the first step for us really deciding that, though, is us, Dinah, Justin, and I, aligning on what we wanted our company to be. It was, are we going to grow a lifestyle mom and pop company, or are we going to grow a brand? Are we going to shoot for billion-dollar brand status? And that doesn't come with just a loan from my father to get us through to the next year. It comes with real institutional capital. So luckily enough, we found some investors in that early stage who believed in us as a management team, a product, and a brand, and a category to invest in us quite early.
Excellent. You talked about what is the mission of the company, if you can sort of share it with us? Because it's not just to make kombucha, it's probably to do more than that. And we had someone come in and talk about purpose, and Simon Sinek on why. You're solving a problem in the market, but what is the essence of the mission of the company?
Yeah, our why has, interestingly enough, always been there. And we always go back to it. But I would say more than ever, when we verbalize it, it means so much more. Ultimately, why we're here, Health-Ade, we create feel-good beverages that not only make people feel good, but really allow people to follow their gut. And follow your gut has been a huge tagline for us from the very beginning. We used it more as a physical feeling, follow your gut, to kombucha, to Health-Ade, because of the probiotic nature of everything. But really it's taken on so much more of a meaning, both for us as people who have quit our jobs to follow our dreams, and that meant building a company. And we're really excited to inspire those to follow their gut, to follow that dream. It doesn't have to be in the form of starting their own company. It can be little changes every day around something that fulfills you. And so for us, we want to be able to represent and be that badge of honor for someone following their dreams, no matter how big or how small.
And you're clear about the values that you want integrated into your company. I've heard you talk about the importance of grit and resolve. Grit, sort of simply defined by Angela Duckworth, sort of the leading researcher on it, is passion and perseverance towards a long-term goal, something that you're going to stay with for a long time. So is grit important to you? Where did you learn it, and how did you incorporate it into the core values of your company?
Yeah, I think grit is at the center of us as people, as a founding trio, as a company. So our 4 values at Health-Ade spell out the word goal. We like to shoot for a goal and hit it. So it's grit, optimism, authenticity, and leadership. But that grit piece was so core to who we are, especially in the beginning stages. Starting a company from scratch is not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of pains. There's a lot of blood, sweat, tears that come with it. Without that grit piece and that kind of resiliency to push forward, you're not going to push forward. And so for us, we had to, and there was no other way than forward for us. And that grit piece has been essential, not just for us as founders, but also the people who came in very early to be able to help us build it, to understand things may not be a smooth, paved road. You're going to encounter bumps in it, and it's how you react to it that ultimately helps define your success and your growth ultimately. So grit has been an important piece. As we've grown and really professionalized our business, I would say that grit is essential, but other pieces around knowing, seeing alternative solutions. The optimism piece is not having rose-colored glasses. It's more about seeing possibilities, solutions, seeing above and beyond what the norm might be. Not shutting something down and being negative, but being open to the possibilities. All of these ideas, I think, really are us as founders, and we were able to distill them into our company.
It's interesting to hear you talk about optimism and input from others, and I've watched some healthy companies and I've watched some unhealthy companies. And the healthy ones, I see, a lack of belittling and embarrassment and sort of picking on people, snarkiness. And so, even though you're going to take a lot of opinions in, once you decide what direction you're going to go, it sounds like your team is all on board and everyone's sort of going in the same direction. You talked about being gritty and overcoming obstacles and challenges, and I think in talks like this, it's very easy to gloss over just how hard it is. Can you share sort of your views on failure and setback, whether they have a relationship to success, and sort of what it takes to have a stomach for that?
Yeah, I can't count the number of failures and the messiness that we've encountered of Health-Ade in the beginning. One example I was sharing today actually is very early on in 2013, at the end of the year of 2013, we were just about to move into our new kitchen. Our new brewery. We were just leaving our old brewery. We just received investment. And that day we got a surprise knock from the health department. And as entrepreneurs who don't know anything about building code, we just happened to not get our plan checks checked. So she literally red tagged our door. We just taken on our first institutional check. We had Gelson's knocking at our door. We were essentially shut down. There was definitely a lot of vomit. There was a lot of tears. There's a lot of freaking out. There was a lot of talking through with that health department lady around how we can maybe get out of this. Now, we did, thank goodness. She gave us a 3-day reprieve to get out and get into our new brewery that was fully certified and plan checked. But those 3 days were probably initially the most pit in your stomach, our company is going to fail right now moment, and we've had so many of those. And it is the resiliency to move past that, but it is this uncanny way to be able to take in stress, take in these inputs. You do know that it does emotionally affect you, but then how to be able to pivot, move forward, and then process what the emotion is later, either with your friends, your loved ones, or your co-founders, or however you choose to let out stress. But emotionally compartmentalizing all that is so important. And that's just one example of so many of failures that we thought we were encountering. Early on in 2012, I remember we were brewing in those 2.5-gallon glass jars. Instead of going to Bed Bath & Beyond, we decided to go straight to the manufacturer for those jars. We were cheap, so we didn't want to get inside delivery. We had no idea what that meant, actually. And what it turned out to mean is they don't actually deliver it into your storage space. You have to unload it yourself. And so I had just quit my job. I was on shift that day for production. And me, myself, I was moving 400 glass jars out of a truck. I had scrapes. I was crying. This truck driver, who's a union worker, just couldn't help me because I didn't pay for it. And I was alarmed at what my life decision was. And so it's at that moment I was just thinking, is this what my life has become? I'm moving jars for a living. And, I thought, it is in that time, I thought there must be a better way to do this. I got on the phone with Diana and Justin crying, like, there must be a better way. We cannot do this for the rest of our lives in the way that we're progressing. So it's in those moments that you actually find clarity, or you just get sucked in by the madness of it all.
And on the flip side, those moments where you just really are like in it, deep in it, those actually turn out to be pretty good memories in the end. I mean, it's no fun at the time, but
Right.
like that she's sitting here laughing about, I once unloaded like 3 carriers full of glass by myself, with your MBA and everything. Those are things that make the journey interesting. While we're talking about mindset, you recently wrote an article on LinkedIn about your self-image and sort of your rare status as an Asian American entrepreneur in this space. Can you share with us sort of what that article was about and what you learned about yourself while you wrote it?
Yeah. So growing up as an Asian American here in LA, I grew up in a very homogenous world, and I was always caught between two worlds. It was the wanting to be in this white world, but on the weekends I was very much going to Chinese school, going to my family traditional events, in temple, and it was always two lives that I felt like I was living. And growing up, I realized that I was racist against myself, actually, because I was always trying to conform to this norm that I thought I had to be. And I didn't actually realize that's how I was until building Health-Ade. As an Asian American entrepreneur, there's so few of us, actually. I didn't realize it and had to think why. Why don't I see more of myself at the boardroom tables? Why don't I see more of myself in some of these entrepreneur events? And I realized that from a very young age, I think Asian Americans in particular are taught that they should follow a very secure path. There's only really 4 jobs that exist. A lawyer, a doctor, engineer, or some type of like world-renowned musician. And I didn't follow any of those. But for me, coming to terms with my Asian American identity and the lack of leaning into this identity is, in my youth, allowed me to become stronger today in business. Overall, I felt that I had to embrace my heritage. I had to be more secure in who I was and find strength from it if I was going to be a strong leader for our business. And there was a lot of personal confrontations I had to encounter. And it was hard because both my parents are engineering majors who followed a great path for themselves, but I wanted to depart from that. Was I secure enough to do that? Why was I always feeling uneasy and seeking approval from them? And I realized it's because I never fully embraced who I am as an Asian American female building a company. And if I couldn't embrace it now, I would never be strong enough for our team or for the future of what we're trying to do.
The more you can move towards self-awareness in anything you do, but particularly as an entrepreneur, is understanding who you are and what you're made of, will serve you very well. Speaking of, say, pleasing others, but responding to others, we started with your parents, so I'm going to open up to students and their questions after this. When you informed your parents that you were going to be an entrepreneur after this expensive business degree, what was your mother and father's response to that?
It was quite interesting. So my mom immediately thought I was depressed or heartbroken and I was going through some type of mental breakdown. She also thought I was not making a coherent decision. So what she ended up doing is actually making me a spreadsheet of all my lost salary, of all my future opportunity costs I was foregoing, all the expenditures they had invested in me going to private school, and basically showing me in Excel what I cost them and what I was giving up. And she thought that would persuade me somehow. My dad, he was also equally thinking that I was depressed, and he called my sister to try and persuade me to stay in my job and inquire if I needed him to find me a boyfriend or something, which was so silly. But I just ended up telling them, like, look, I'm in my mid-20s. I want to create something. If I'm not going to bet on myself now, when am I going to do it? Thank you for investing in me, and you may not believe in me now, but I believe in myself, so just let me give it a shot. I'm confident enough to know I can get a job and survive. So just let me be.
If anybody has those conversations, you've got a good example here. Let's open it up to students. Do you have the handheld mic? I want to give you guys plenty of time to ask questions.
Hi, first of all, thank you so much for coming today. I am actually also a biochemistry major and I'm pre-med, and I was just wondering as a former biochemistry major and as a former pre-med, what your experiences was like going through the whole gauntlet of classes and requirements for medical school, and just what your overall experience was and how you eventually decided that this wasn't the path for you and to pursue a career with Health-Ade.
So I mentioned my mom found out she was sick when I was 6 years old. So why I really started on this path of wanting to be a doctor is because I wanted to cure her disease. And so that was kind of the altruistic side of me. But as I started going through the classes, and I went to UCSD for undergrad, and they were filled with like very smart people who were way more dedicated to the craft than I was. I I love science, and I'm kind of a nerd, but I wasn't in TA hours, every day, putting in the time. And so for me, it was less about the reason why I was learning it. It was more about me learning it because I was interested, less about taking the test, I guess you could say. And that didn't interest me to do something because I felt like I was on this path already. So then I just switched from the pre-med path and got an internship at a pharmaceutical company, and thought I would get out of the lab, which I was working in at that time, because that's what you do as a pre-med person, and see what else is out there on the customer-facing side of science. And that's kind of what pivoted me away from it.
Thank you for speaking today. Hi, my name is Ash. I really appreciated that story of communicating your entrepreneurship decision to your parents, because I think it's ironic that their investment in you is part of what enabled you to make this decision that helped you develop your self-agency, and I agree with that a lot. My question is, during initial sales, how did you get the product to speak for itself instead of having to explain it every time, or at least eventually after your hustle/sample stage? Thank you.
So it was really the packaging that we wanted to invest in, because you can't be there all the time to sample and be there when someone picks up a bottle. So what is that bottle communicating? We had, at the time, in the farmer's market, we had a very nostalgic kind of parchment paper feel. As we went into stores, we really shifted our label to be more colorful. Health-Ade and Kombucha were bigger on the label. So it was a combination of bright colors, fonts that were more in your face and you actually knew what you were drinking. And then third, really trying to communicate on the label what made us different. So if someone were to pick it up and they could read, you could easily kind of read what was in the bottle.
Hi, thank you for coming. I just want to ask, what's your favorite flavor of your kombucha? You must have one favorite flavor.
Oh, it's like, which child do you like today? So interestingly enough, I really like spicy flavors. So I love like cayenne usually, but honestly, my jam right now is bubbly rose. So it's just subtly tart, just subtly sweet. There's the floral aspect. I'm a fan. If you haven't tried it, you should try it.
I know, I need to try it. I like Pink Lady Apple.
Oh yeah, that's a
Big
strong
fan.
favorite.
Thank you for coming.
Hi, thank you for coming out. I remember at the beginning of the kombucha craze, this was probably one of the first types of kombucha I ever saw. So I was wondering how you knew that kombucha was a product that had so much potential before it really blew up.
Yeah, we didn't. I think what we were trying to tap into is we had a great product. We saw the other products that were on the shelf in the space, and that didn't really deter us from putting ours out there. We knew we could make something better tasting. And so we also knew better for you is better. And so we wanted to do something in that way to impact the world in the right direction. And so for us, we didn't have this magic ball saying, "Yaha, this is the category to invest in." I think ultimately we just landed on the product, and we wanted to push our time, and just so happened that the world is also looking for a better for you product that makes them feel good, that's not high in sugar, like the juices or sodas that they're typically drinking.
How do you sort of read someone to learn whether or not they're working for you to go towards the same goal, and they're going to work for you because they actually want to work for you, or because they're just doing it as a job or for money, finding the passion in someone?
Yeah. So now we've really been able to fine-tune how we hire. At minimum, you need to have that expertise in what you're looking for in the job function, right? But what we've been able to institute is a culture interview that's actually been quite helpful for us to understand the type of person that's coming into our organization. You can have someone who can do the job all day long, but do they fit within your culture? Do they vibe with you? Not just on because you're a cool person, but do they actually share the same values as you? Yeah, and there's this thing called an airport test. Can you sit with them at an airport and not want to kill them? And so for us, there's that, and then also when I mention our values, goal, grit, optimism, authenticity, leadership, I wouldn't just ask you, are you gritty? you want to see it, but how do you do that? So you have to ask them questions like, tell me about your worst day at work. Like, what was it? Talk me through it. What did you think about? What came of it? And it really kind of brings you into the mindset of that person. And you really get to understand how they think, and is that someone you want in your organization?
Thank you so much for coming today, and I love the bubbling rose as well. It's like a alcohol-free version of rosé, so it's pretty good. Yeah, it's
right
really
on.
good. Yeah, and I want to know that. So in your like early stage, the product like kombucha is a kind of foreign product to the kind of like current market. So it's really challenging to like promote it because it's first it's new, and second, as the name is a kind of aid, so it's not necessary for people. It's something that can help them to like facilitate their health in a way. So what did you do to like overcome those promotional obstacles?
Yeah, there's a lot of education in the beginning. It still is. A lot of people still don't know about kombucha. There are so many hands like that rose in this classroom, but we're also in a microcosm of LA. So everyone knows about kombucha here, but half of the US does not even know what kombucha is. So back then, we still had to educate, what is kombucha? Have you tried kombucha? Here's what kombucha is. Here's how Health-Ade is different. So it's very stepwise in that type of discussion. And we still have to do that today, just in different ways that it's not going to make someone's eyes gloss over.
So GT Dave, who's like another kombucha connoisseur, went viral last year on like a YouTube video. And I was wondering if you see the value in and want to use social media like Twitter as a way to reach out to a younger or maybe just like a generally misinformed audience, and what would your ideal outreach look like?
Yeah. Yes, social media and engagement on digital platforms is very important to us. That video is interesting. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you do see it, because it went viral, I think, for the wrong reasons that he may have intended, honestly. And for us, I think the way that we want to approach it is authentically true to who we are and our brand. And so being who we're not on social media just wouldn't be our style. We are very active on Instagram. We are looking to speak to all of you, this age group right here, actually. As I understand it, TikTok is a big thing. So Twitter, yes, but we're exploring other platforms that really do reach this type of audience, and not just playing to one type of group.
Hi, so my question's about competition. So kind of when you realized that there was traction and there was a market for this, did you kind of stick to your strong brand and say that we don't have to run with this because people love our ingredients and love our logo and our product? Or do you think that we have to run with this before, a big, other company like Coke comes with a copy?
So if I'm not mistaken, the question is, do we run with what we've got, or are we fearful that someone's going to copy us? How do we deal with competition? So for the most part, we like to focus on what we do best. So that was always kind of our key features. That was always our, what we can stand on, put on a pedestal for us. And it's how we made it. It was our flavor profile. It was our brand recognition. And so for that piece of it, we had blinders on of sorts. We still understood what people were doing, but we didn't want to do things just because another competitor did them. So that was really important to us, and still is. We're kind of marching to the beat of our own drum a little bit, and I think that's proven well for us.
Hi. I had a quick question. How do you think the healthy food and beverage market trend is going, if it's increasing or decreasing, and how you see the future of the company turning out in result of that?
Yeah, it's 100% increasing in terms of trends toward healthier options. I actually had there's a group called Spins. They measure all of the data that's in the world with consumer packaged goods. So their executive team was in our brewery on Monday, and they cited 4 things as trending: plant-based, lower sugar, lower calorie, and there's a 4th one that escapes me right now, but it was healthy. And so I think as people just understand more about what is good for them, how they're feeling, how they want to feel, part of their lifestyle choices will be healthier food options. And I think it's part of the food system, and we're part of this food system to create access to those options.
I'm curious what your parents think now that you've encountered so much success.
Interestingly enough, my dad called me a couple months ago, which is weird and random, at my office line. I didn't even know he had my office line. And he said he was proud of me and he loved me for a non-communicative Asian male. That's like big. And so I'm very certain that he's proud and he's excited. My mom passed away a couple years ago, but I know that she's looking down on us and really proud of me and what our team have created.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I was just wondering if you had any plans to expand beyond just kombucha as a brand.
Yeah, 100% actually. So we never looked at ourselves as just a kombucha brand. Keep in mind, we just did it because we thought it was good for hair loss and we had this cool product. When we thought of our brand, we thought, what type of cool stuff can we build under it? And as we've become more focused around what our brand position is, what our brand really stands for, Health-Ade, period, is an awesome platform brand for other feel-good beverages. And so get excited for that in years to come.
Looking forward to it.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. So I'm just sorry to admit I didn't know what kombucha is until today, so I'll be a new customer. But my question is, my question is, I wanted to know about your. So you briefly mentioned taking the period when you knew you had to take investor money. So I wanted to know your how was your mindset at that point? Because really to be taking money from someone else always, no matter the amount, adds a significant pressure. So
yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, also at that point, I should describe where we were personally. So our company, had probably racked up close to 100,000 K of credit card debt. And when I say company, I mean us personally. We were also paying ourselves, every 6 weeks, $300. I had taken out student loans from USC, not to actually pay my tuition, but to live. So we were literally living on a credit card and a dream. So in order to have our company grow, we needed money. So the mindset was like survival, but at the same time, when you have investment money come in, you also have this idea of, are they going to take control of my company? Who are these investors? So I remember having a legal professor at USC, our entrepreneurial professor, some type of referral of other lawyers, like 6 people on our call. We racked up probably 100K of legal fees trying to talk through the risks of venture capital. And we were both worried about surviving without the money, but we needed it, and also the money and the strings that it came with. So it was honestly, it's kind of a mindfuck, to be quite honest.
Hi, I was just wondering, what was the thought process behind like the packaging and like how big the bottle is? Because I know you guys make like half-gallon bottles, but it's not very accessible in a sense. Like the market doesn't really have it, and like when they do, they only carry like 2 or 3 half-gallon bottles. Like, what is the mindset like when creating the size of the drink?
Yeah. You are a heavy user, and you know our brand very well. I like it. So our bottle is 16 ounces. It feels like a lot, though. It has a lot of girth to it. It has some heftiness to it. So we wanted our bottle to be feeling like it was premium always. So that was always a guiding post for us. Honestly, when we started, the stock bottle of this amber was around 16 ounce. So it was either 8 or 16. So we went to 16. As we develop our custom mold here, we wanted to have always that premium feel. Now, as when you're in the startup mode, you're just like growth, let's go turbo mode. This is 99% of our sales in this format. That growler version, the 64 ounces that you speak of, that was really as a request because stores said, hey, customers want to buy more. Can you make a bigger size? And so that was really the impetus for the 64 ounce. But as I think about the future, it's more about the consumption patterns around our consumers. So how are they buying? Do they want more flavors of that size? Do they not want such a large jug? But do you guys want more bottles in a multi-pack versus one large jug. And so I think as we understand the consumer a little bit better, that will help inform how we actually make these bottling and packaging decisions with an even more sophisticated view.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. I am a very like similar position like where you were with starting a company and then having my mom be like, I didn't send you to USC to go do this. And so I'm a senior, I'm about to graduate, and I just started a health and wellness brand last year that I'm working on, and currently going to be working on full time with no other plans after graduation. So I was wondering, like, for you in that transition period of having a full time job that's very secure with these, Asian, like Chinese American parents, like, what was the things that you had to do for yourself to help transition you into a mindset where you can grow to where you are right now? And then who did you lean on, or who did you have to connect with to help you feel more confident in going into your field?
So mindset-wise, early on, it was survival, actually, because quitting my job, having that student loan that was really my sustenance I planned out for a year. It was more like, okay, it's time to make it or not. And so that ultimately helped fuel me a little bit. And yes, in the beginning, surrounding myself with people who, like brands that I admired at the time, who, let's just say were way farther advanced in distribution, way more advanced in terms of sales, brands that I thought were cool, doing cool things out there, I would reach out to them to see like how they did it, what resources they used, what partners they used, what distributors they may have used, because you can't assume you know anything, right? And you also won't know everything. And you're doing this and you're learning the ropes, but it helps to have this network that you're tapping into. So that was really helpful for me. I was like this sponge that just soaked up a lot from the industry. But their advice is not to be taken like, oh, I need to apply this to my business. It was, okay, I'll take these inputs from all these different brands and people, but what feels right for the growth of our brand, for the growth of our team, for the growth of our company. So it was never, let me take this blanket statement and apply it.
Hi, my name's Jolie. Thank you again so much for coming. I've seen you in a few different coffee shops around the world, like on tap, and I wanted to know like how that journey was getting into those various shops, and if that was like similar to getting into different distribution companies, and like how'd you go about that deal?
Yeah, so it's very interesting to sell directly to that store versus kind of navigating the distribution network. So if you've seen us through a bottle sold at any of those coffee shops, it could have been because we were self-delivering it and literally just go in, talk to the store manager, do you want to buy this and stock it? Here's why. Kind of going through the whole program of why they should. So that was fairly easy. But as we started through distribution, selling Health-Ade or anything on tap comes with a whole lot of headaches. So going through a distributor made that a lot easier, but also introduced a lot more intricacies as well. So we go through a coffee distributor who delivers kegs. They manage the lines, they manage a keg, they clean the lines. In the beginning, we were actually doing the keg distribution. We were actually going to like Veggie Grill and Alfred's Coffee to clean the lines. We are not beer distributors. We didn't know how to do any of that. So we quickly learned that that's not our specialty, so we needed to work with distribution to help grow that. And that's how we go to market today for that product.
Hi, my question is, what do you think is an appropriate approach to paying yourself as the founder of a new venture?
If you would have asked me a couple years ago, it would be very different than now. So we were win at all cost people, and we were very much sacrificial lambs for our business and always have been. I don't suggest that because it really hurts your mental mindset and where you are. But one example of that is when we got our investment, we set our salary of modest salary. Anything more, keep in mind we were paying ourselves $300 every 6 weeks. So anything beyond that was like gravy. We thought, okay, we have a steady paycheck now. But when we started to hire some key hires that weren't in our budget, we put ourselves at the expense of that. So we actually took a cut in our salary to still make poverty level money. And a lot of founders that I talk to now, they're like, are you crazy? Why would you do that? Even our investors at the time were like, why do you have to take a cut in your own pay? But we did it because we thought we were doing it for the betterment of our company. So I guess the me today would say, take enough that is good for you in your lifestyle, and also enough that the company can sustain. And also, given where your company size is, where the market is, you can probably gain a pretty good standard on what your salary should be. We learned the hard way that putting yourself at the expense of it is not the best way.
If you are owning it in thirds, and they owned it in thirds and didn't have investors, if they're all taking the same risk, same cut and pay, the same subsidy, and they're all working the same, then it's fair. Where you also get an imbalance is someone's not active, she's active, working full time, they're still keeping their job. If you all take the same thing, it's not fair, so you get into that. But a lot of your investors will say, we don't want you to kill yourself because there's so much pressure for you to like go earn a living. We want you to be enough to make ends meet. Obviously, not so much that you're hurting the business, but you always have to look at what hat you're wearing. Am I an employee? Am I a shareholder? Am I both? And how is it fair to everybody? Because that actually breeds resentment if you're working harder than everyone else and taking the same pay. Did I miss anybody? I have one more question to finish before we wrap up. I could talk. I could do this all night.
Me too.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Do you have a personal philosophy? Have you sort of crystallized that as part of your self-reflection?
There's a couple that I go back to. The one that I feel, there's two. One is the answer is always no unless you ask. And this came up often when I was younger because I think I would always not ask for things. And then I thought, well, I'm never going to get what I want. So I had to ask and see what the answer was, and most of the time was no. And I was figure out a different way to get the yes that I wanted. And then the second one, okay, this sounds a little weird, but it's like let your freak flag fly. But it's just more about like being yourself. And I feel like I heard that, and I'm like, yeah, I just want to be myself and be unique. I don't have to front that I'm something else. And so for me, that's been important as I've grown up.
The earlier in life you can figure that out, and actually, it's very hard to do that. You're entering the world as like the youngest employee, the youngest whatever, and so you think you have to sort of give off this air of, maturity, experience. When I was a lawyer, I was 24 years old at a big firm, and I remember even like lowering my voice. Hello, this is Dave Belasco, and I was just like, what the hell was that about? But I was trying to like, I'm so credible, even though I had imposter syndrome and all the other things you have at these places. So it's important to know that, and the sooner you can sort of reflect on that and understand who you are and what makes you you, that's your competitive advantage in life. All the things that you probably think are your weakness, probably in 10, 15 years, they're going to make you really unique and different to somebody. So don't shy away from those. Authenticity is sort of one of your third core values. And then finally, and I want to come to you guys for some lessons and takeaways. So I saw so many notes over there. I was really impressed at how many notes you were taking. So I want to hear a couple lessons and quotes before we leave. But I wanted to finish with you've worked for a big pharma company, and now you're part of an entrepreneurial venture and a founder. Can you contrast why, if this is the case, why being an entrepreneur is better and different than working for a company?
Yeah, so this often comes up during the hard days of this entrepreneurial world. It's like, man, the grass is always greener, right? Like, what would I be doing if I weren't doing this? And the lows may be really low as an entrepreneur, and then it may be really more painful both to you personally, physically, your wallet. But the joy in creating something that you physically have been able to make yourself, having that have positive impact to someone else who's actually consuming that because you did that, is not something you directly feel when you work with a large company. The large company, I didn't treat it like it was my own. I didn't actually I tried to use the most expense amount that I could on the company card. I really didn't care about the team in the sense of, what are we cultivating? What are we building in terms of a brand, a community? It was a job. This is actually a lifestyle. It's something that you bear. You've born out into the world, and someone is enjoying it because you're able to create it. And so for me, like what keeps me going, and like I wouldn't have this feeling if I was at a large company, is one, when I see Health-Ade out in the wild and people are loving it and drinking it, that's really exciting to me. And I wouldn't have that same attachment at a large company. And then second is just going back to the people. I mean, the people really do it for me. I am so proud of them for being able to build what they've been able to build. And that type of investment on the part of them and the empowerment they feel, the love that they have for the company, that's beautiful. And I don't think I would have recognized that in a corporation.
There are advantages to both, and there'll be times in your life where you may be an entrepreneur, there'll be times in your life where you may work for a company that you don't own. Getting a consistent check every 2 weeks or every month is something that, as an early entrepreneur, you just don't see. And if you do, my first salary at my company was $3,000 a month, so it's $36,000 a year, which was a tenth of what I was making as a lawyer. Sometimes we think of business people that were not as creative as the musicians and artists and things like that, and that's where I get the most satisfaction. Is like a blank piece of paper. You and your co-founders had a whiteboard and a blank piece of paper and started solving hair loss and found kombucha. It is so creative to start something and express it and put it out in the world and see it come back, and not only provide for you but all the other people in the world. There's also that control part. If you work for a company, at any given point in time, someone can change their mind and say, thank you, but we're moving on and going a different direction. If you're an entrepreneur, you're at least going to see the train coming at you. You'll know. It's probably customers and revenue and things like that more than anything. But if you do it and it works, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like building a lifestyle. And I sort of shared this before. Like I thought growing up poor that you build a company to sell it. You build a company to have a good life, and if it provides for you and it fuels your family, all the things you want to do, be very reluctant just to sell that. Let's thank Vanessa Dew.